Welcome to the podcast. We Do Recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about recovery from addiction.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
All right. Welcome to We Do Recover.
Hey, give me a little enthusiasm. All right.
I was blowing up the mic. This new mic.
right.
We got this fancy new mic stand, and
you got
there we go. Now we're
you got a new
rolling.
mic stand.
So what do you get when you combine a substance abuse counselor, a board-certified addictionologist, and the director of a radio station?
Wow, this is a tough riddle.
A couple professional goofballs trying to send a message of recovery.
All
Boom.
right. I like to call it We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
That's right. You're listening to We Do Recover. I'm the host of this thing, Jared Miller. Today I'm joined by your co-host, the Dr. Terry Sellers.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's afternoon.
And the producer that makes this thing possible, Sean Denovan. Yay! Today on We Do Recover, we're going to talk about Oregon decriminalizing small amounts of all drugs. But before that, episode 51, part 1, is brought to you by Steps Recovery Centers, where addiction ends and healing begins. If you or a loved one need help, please give them a call. That phone number is 801-800-8142. So, nice freaking white and blue and I'm just disgusted, Sellers.
What are you talking about?
Your outfit. I'm just sitting over here just disgusted.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know.
This is a great outfit.
Do you see our outfits we got? Hopefully if you guys are watching this, right? The film version of this. Dr. Sellers is in his Y outfit. I got the typical I'm trying to go for the Boz look today. How am I doing?
Pretty good, actually.
The sunglasses.
I just need
I just need
It's
like
not
the long
bad.
hair in the back. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I should have glued something on back there.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. Absolutely.
Are you ready for the rivalry game?
I am. So that's something we can have a little fun with for sure, because for anybody who's not for anyone who knows anything about sports, tomorrow is the big game in state.
The Holy War.
It's the Holy War. Once listed as maybe the second best rivalry in the entire nation. I feel like it's dwindled a little bit, but not a lot.
After this podcast, it's going to blow up.
Oh, we're blowing up.
Because, I mean, people can see that I'm wearing
You're
the
wearing
colors
red?
it's going to win.
Well, no, you're wearing red.
The University of Utah.
You're wearing
baby.
red, though. Did you?
Yeah, I'm fully aware
I
of that.
thought maybe you were colorblind.
Go Utes, baby. So,
Utes?
10 long years.
What do you got? It's been a minute, no question.
What do
Listen,
you got? I mean,
got
I'm
no-
sitting over
I
here
got
with
no
10 long
I got no argument
years.
with that.
4,302 days.
4,000.
Give or take a day.
302 days.
Wonder what you're doing furiously typing on your phone over there. Now I just found out. Apparently it's been 4,302 days since BYU beat Utah in football.
That's right. Does any other sport matter?
I mean, ballroom dancing. I mean, they do good at ballroom
Oh, we
dancing.
got
I'm sure.
'em.
Oh, yeah.
We
yeah.
got 'em in ballroom
BYU,
dancing.
Yeah.
It's country
Sure.
dancing that, you know what I mean, that they got us in.
We got you in ballroom dancing too. We got a nice ballroom dancing troupe. We also have you in basketball, men's and women's soccer, volleyball, golf.
I just want to know if your secondary is ready for
But
Brewer.
football, we don't have it yet.
I just want to know if your secondary
Not
is ready
this 10 years.
for Brewer.
We're gonna see tomorrow.
Yeah. Hey, we will.
We're going to see tomorrow. So for those of you that I wasn't here last week for the podcast because I went down to the BYU Arizona game, which was down in Las Vegas, and that was a ton of fun. We played okay. We weren't great. I didn't come away from that game thinking for sure we're going to beat Utah, because no, the team that if we don't improve on last week, we're not going to beat Utah, because Utah's for sure better than Arizona. And we beat Arizona. The game wasn't really in doubt. The final score was semi-close, but the game wasn't that close. But we didn't blow them away. We beat them, but we didn't blow them away for sure.
We're going to get to talking about the decriminalization
We're
that's
not even
happening
talking
in Oregon.
about that.
But
I don't even know what you're
I
talking
do
about.
want to. I mean, this is a huge week.
Right. This is
The
big.
Holy War, baby.
Right.
And so
This is
I
big.
watched the University of Utah play Weber State. And the whole time, okay, I'm a football guy. I'm an old coach.
Wait a sec. Hold on. Before you do that, because let me tell you what people ragged me about all last year.
All right, let's get it.
Playing a high school schedule. Okay, who'd you guys play last week again?
I mean,
oh,
what are we
Weber
talking?
State. That's right.
That's
Weber
old
State.
news. What are you trying to say, man?
Worse than any team we played last year.
What are you trying? That's my alma mater.
Hey, Weber's playing here this week here at DSU.
Well,
See,
listen,
they play
all right.
tough teams.
Listen,
They play tough
Weber
teams.
Weber's good in their division. It's not a good division, right?
They
But-
are
but
packed.
I'm not trying to downplay Weber. Weber's a smaller school. It's just not on par with a Pac-12 school.
Yeah, they're
It's
the
not
Mountain,
on par with BYU.
They're the Mountain West Conference champs for years. But okay, so anyways, let me get to my. Okay, so I'm.
I think you made that up. I don't think they're Mountain
No,
West
they are.
Conference champs. No,
They have been for like the last, I think,
made that up.
3 or 5 years.
How about Big Sky?
Big Sky? Sorry. Yep, you're right.
Mountain
Big
West
Sky.
is Boise State, and Weber won't
Anyways.
beat Boise State.
Potato, tomato. All right.
I just
so-
saw that video.
It's a funny
Tomato,
one, huh?
tomato.
Okay, so the coach in me, as I'm watching Utah play Weber State,
What's a tomato?
oh my, is thinking to myself, what are we doing? Like Utah could just run at Weber State and
Right.
crush them,
Right.
right?
You
Like
would-
absolutely.
You would think.
They for sure would.
Should.
But they're slinging the ball around. You know what I mean? They're hitting their receivers.
Yeah.
And then I watch BYU play. What does BYU have up front? Some big
We got
defensive
big- We got
boys.
big boys.
Line,
We for sure will be playing the run better than the pass.
yes, the linebacker crew for the Y is always
Solid.
solid.
Right.
And so then it dawned on me, right? It hit me. Like my observation of both games. I don't know, right? I haven't talked to Coach Witt, but my theory was I think the U was preparing ahead of time
for
for
sure.
the Y.
For sure. And it makes sense. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like having sort of an easy win on your first game of the year. Tons of teams do that. That's not a Utah thing. That's at lots of teams. Look at who Ohio State played last week, or look at who, Alabama plays Troy, and
Right,
like
right.
Clemson plays
Non-conferences are just kind of warm-ups.
North Carolina A&T, and the first game of the year can easily be used as a warm-up. The problem with BYU schedule is, of course, no conference affiliation. Oh wait, yes we do, but
Who?
never mind. Big 12 invited us
Oh.
today or yesterday, and we have accepted.
Breaking news, everybody.
I think it's out there, but they invited BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and University of Central Florida, and they're still thinking hard about Memphis and Boise State.
Nice.
So yeah, that'll be a P5 conference, hopefully. Although there's some talk that maybe Big 12 doesn't get to be a P5 conference because Texas and Oklahoma are leaving, which is giant losses, of course. They're going to the SEC. But so anyway, BYU with no conference affiliation, we struggle to fill games in October and November because that's when everyone's in their conference races.
Right.
So we have to shove big teams in early. We can't play Troy. We can't play Weber State early. We have to, if we're playing them, we have to try and play them late because we can't shove big teams in late. If we're going to play big teams at all, if we're going to play Utah, remember it used to always be November 25th.
Oh yeah.
Utah's not going to play us on November 25th
No.
because they're preparing for USC or
Right.
they're preparing to, maybe be in a conference championship
You
game or
don't want to
something.
be in the middle of your, you know what I mean, your conference run
Yeah.
and have to play non-conference teams.
And
It's
then
just
have to
weird.
play a team that won't, even if you beat them, won't really do you much good.
No.
Listen, BYU is a good team, but it doesn't really do Utah any good in the middle of a conference race, towards the end of a conference race to play BYU. That wouldn't do any good at all.
Listen, I love this. I missed this last year.
Yeah, sure.
I needed this in my life, some football.
Sure,
some
I got
football.
2 tickets for you.
Hey, really?
Yeah, tomorrow night.
Oh, you
You can sit right by me.
I
You
love
can
it.
wear
I'm
whatever
coming in
you want.
red.
You can. Oh, for sure. If you
Mandy's coming in red.
ca- if
We're
you
coming
came
Ute
in-
out.
If you came not in red, I'd be disappointed. Come on.
Okay, all right. I love
I'm
you,
asking
Sellers.
you not to be unbelievably obnoxious, but for sure you have to cheer for your team. Like, don't throw beer at us.
Really?
I've actually had that happen, and I know people say it doesn't. I've had it happen.
So first of all, I don't drink beer.
Wait, you've had beer thrown at you at a BYU game?
Yeah.
That makes
but
perfect. I mean, I can see them throwing caffeinated drinks
Right,
at you, but
I was a BYU game, but it was up in Salt Lake.
Nice. Well, let's get to some new and good.
Right
I mean,
after
I
they
know-
asked me if I was still a virgin.
Oh, sweet.
Did I tell you that story?
No.
I literally was sitting in
I guess we're getting it.
I was literally sitting in a section with the coaches' families because my wife's brother was a strength and conditioning coach for BYU for a long time. And I'm sitting and I'm walking out of the stadium and there's 3 Utah students there. And who walks in front of me? Patty Edwards. Lavelle Edwards was a classy man, and Patty Edwards was the class of the family.
Gotcha.
And these 3 Utah students are sitting there. Are you a virgin? Are you a virgin? Are you a virgin? They asked Patty Edwards if she was a virgin. I almost got in a fight.
Yeah.
Almost got in a fight with that. I'm like, come on.
Yeah, that's rough.
Grow up. Let me grab my 3 kids.
Right, we're out of here.
Yeah.
Vanessa, I love you guys. Big love. We love you too.
Hi,
Appreciate
Vanessa.
you, sister.
Hi, Vanessa.
Yeah.
I used to live a few houses down from Vanessa.
I know. Yeah.
That's a story.
So, let's check in on some new and goods.
Okay, let's do that.
So Sean Denman, let's get him in the
Sean,
mix.
what's new and good with you? Are you a virgin?
We're on one today.
I know.
Wow.
I didn't know what to answer either.
No, I had 3 jokes ready to go, and I couldn't say any of them.
What?
There's jokes I say. Yes, yeah. I thought of a punchline, but I'm like, I can't say that with this crowd.
You can't say it on this podcast?
It goes on the radio too.
I mean, like,
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
all right.
Anyway, life's good.
Beep.
That's all. Everything.
Start telling your joke, and I'll just do this every
No.
once in a while. Beep.
And nothing too exciting, nothing too good. Got a motorcycle ride, actually a memorial ride for a friend of ours who passed away last year.
Oh.
So we have a ride tomorrow that we're doing. And
Where's the ride to?
I don't know, just around St. George.
Okay.
So just a little.
Getting out and getting on the bike and
Yeah,
riding around.
just,
Okay.
just a memorial ride for that. And that's about it. You know, I got some new swag for the radio station. Got our new tent.
I love it.
I gave you guys those little clips, those little
Yeah.
chip clips.
Yeah.
There you go.
Got one. I got
And today
got it.
you're going to get in the mix with this topic, I
Oh,
hope.
that's right. You want like
We
my
need-
opinions
Yes,
and
Yeah.
we
discussion.
do. We need the normie opinion.
Because we have
I've asked my
2
wife
people
to
in
come
the
on this
industry.
podcast to be the normie opinion,
Well,
and she
I'm
just
ready
won't
to
do
talk. You guys like wasted 12 minutes talking
I
about
know.
like hockey or
No,
something.
that's not wasted. That's life right there.
That's
This other
really
stuff's-
important.
this
That's
other
life
stuff's
in
not
recovery,
This
okay?
other stuff's not relevant.
Like left-handed only pickleball. Hey, I'm the best. Whatever.
Oh, man.
You liar. You're a right-hander. You cheater.
Vanessa saying big story.
It's a big story.
Tim, how's
Hey,
it going,
Tim.
buddy? Hey,
What's up,
guys.
brother?
Love you guys.
Amber, love my Fridays with you guys. Thanks. We love our Fridays with you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate those
Thanks,
who
Amber.
listen.
All right,
So-
what's new and good with you, Doc?
I bought a new car.
Okay.
I'm so excited about it. I can't stand it because you guys, you know some stuff about me. I'm flashy.
No
Yeah,
way.
it's true. Like I'm
No
flashy.
way.
I like buying German cars. I think they're really well made, but they're also flashy, and quite expensive usually. I bought a Hyundai Sonata hybrid, which is so against everything that is me. I can't stand it, and I'm so in love with that car. I can hardly bear how much I love the car.
I'm so proud of you, Dr.
It's so
Sellers.
practical. It's so unbelievably.
You're growing up
practical
right in
for
front of
me.
my eyes.
My
buddy.
wife was so happy that I was willing to buy that. I'm like, why are we here at the Hyundai dealership? I'm not going to buy this. And then we got in this, and apparently they have a hard time keeping the hybrids on the lot. And this car had just gotten on the lot 2 hours beforehand, and they had no other hybrids on the lot. And we went and drove a regular Hyundai Sonata, not hybrid, and it was okay. I mean, they're making a decent car. It's a good car.
Yeah.
But I just didn't thrill me. And then we got in the hybrid, and it was just really cool. I
love it.
I'm happy with it. I got 61 miles a gallon coming
It's
down.
white.
there.
It's gorgeous.
It's white.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Sweet,
lovely.
Sweet. All right, so my new and good. I'm not going to keep you guys much longer from the topic at hand because we're pretty excited to talk about Oregon decriminalizing the small amount of drugs and going into that. My new and good, however, is recovery days. Sean Denman, will you cue the little slide we got going on here? So we got recovery days
look at
coming
that.
up Thursday, September 30th.
Look at that.
From 4
We
o'clock
have
to
audio
7
visual.
p.m. That's right. In the town square of St. George, there's going to be live music. There's going to be free food, games, prizes, resources, family activities. So if you are in recovery, even if you're in addiction,
I'll have
come
to
on
see if
out.
I
I
can get
love
down here.
I love
Yeah.
seeing people in addiction.
Yeah, it's
Still
fun.
love them.
It's fun. Remember the golf
Absolutely.
tournament you and I played in this week?
Yes.
Just seeing people, that's fun. Like
Oh, absolutely.
that kind of stuff.
The
is really
social
fun.
piece is so important. So
Right.
make sure you get out to recovery days. It's put on by USARA. Love those guys.
Hey,
September 30th.
Let me ask you a question. Usually a countdown clock goes down to 0. That's headed north, my friend.
All right, when it hits 25, you're done. All right,
That's headed
I'll
north.
fix it at the break.
That is headed north.
I know. I had to
can't,
change it for the other podcast.
I thought I had OCD.
Sorry.
Man,
Wow.
you're on it, Sellers. All right, so
Well, I'm like, when are we going to get to 0? Oh, wait, we're not ever going to get to 0 on that clock. We'll get to 100, but never 0.
all right, let's jump into it.
All right.
I think we're
Shall
done with
we?
recovery days.
recovery
that
days. Go recovery
still-
days. Yeah.
All right, so Oregon.
So let's get into it.
How does somebody get to the point where they decriminal? Like, talk to me.
Okay,
You've been in this
so,
thing a lot longer than
yeah.
I have. Drop some knowledge on me.
Well,
Dr.
I'd like to
Sellers.
start with a couple of things because
Drum roll.
first of all, one of the things the thing we're talking about is it was a House bill. It was Resolution 110 in Oregon, and it passed, and it didn't legalize. That's not what it did.
Passed
it
in November.
Decriminalized small amounts of illicit drugs for personal use. You can still get a fine. You just don't get jail time for this. Okay.
Yeah.
But I wanted to start, how did we get to that point? And I think that there's a quick, I don't want to dwell on this part at all because I don't think it's all that important. But, drug abuse has been around forever, right? There are biblical stories of using wine as a weapon of war. Go get the other people drunk and then you attack them. And, I mean, there's stuff about this from way back. And half the stuff you read, I think, in the Old Testament where it sounds like people are possessed by the devil, they also sound quite drunk, frankly.
From the dawn of time.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a problem forever. We've always tried to. So, but in the history of our country,
The United States of America.
in the history of the United States of America, we've dealt with this forever. And what happened is people with drug abuse problems bother society sometimes.
Yeah.
The guy who's laying on the street corner, laying in the gutter, like he's bothersome. People don't want to walk by that guy, right?
So it
It's
actually,
bothersome. So it's a problem. Go ahead.
yeah, it actually happened all the way back in like the 1800s,
Sure.
right? With basically clergy deemed those who couldn't control their drinking as immoral people.
Immoral.
Right. Right.
Well, and that's how it started, right? So here's where we are today, and then I'll go right back. Again, I'm taking longer than I meant to, but where we are today is we believe and we're trying to put forth this narrative that addiction is a disease, right?
Yeah.
Well, it is. I don't think there's there's very little argument about that in the medical community. There's some people outside of the medical community that don't believe it, and there's frankly a few in, but it's a disease.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a disease, who should be dealing with this problem?
The medical community.
Right, exactly, right. Well, medical community are humans like everyone else. We look at the guy that's passed out in the gutter and think, oh gosh, I don't want to deal with that guy, right?
Oh, trust me, every time I take somebody to the ER, I get that.
Right. We don't want to have to get there's an old saying in the ER. It's called Gomer.
Okay.
Get out of my ER.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
used for drug addicts all the time. Gomer. It's
Gomer.
another Gomer. Get out of my ER.
Get them out.
Yeah. So the medical community should have stepped up and treated this as the medical problem that it is. And the medical community shirked their responsibility. And so the alcoholics and then later the heroin addicts start committing crimes. And since the medical community has basically refused to deal with it, it fell to the legal system. Now cops are dealing with it, right? And prison wardens are dealing with it. And so it became a criminal sort of activity based on the fact that doctors did not step up and do what they should have done with this as a disease, because I don't know why they didn't do it, but probably because nobody...
Because the stigma started all the way back in
the stigma was there from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, you can look at a guy passed out in a gutter, and it's pretty easy to have a judgment on that guy.
Definitely.
Right? And I think that's what happened is doctors did that, and like, I don't want to deal with that guy. He doesn't have a disease. He's making terrible choices. Stop drinking.
Right.
Well, I mean,
the stigma started
could
early.
you equate this to the individuals who show up in the ER with orifices filled with objectionable objects?
It's a great point.
You know, it's like you look at them, you roll your eyes, you see these stories online, you laugh about them, like how they do that, what's going on here. And it's like, but they made a choice to do that. And I think there's that same idea. You have a car accident victim. Oh, great. Stroke, heart attack, not their fault. You know, substance abuse, their fault.
Right.
Somebody sticking things where they shouldn't be, their fault.
Right.
You know, some dumb kid, whatever, doing some TikTok thing, their fault. So I think there's a line, but more so, as you're saying, more so with substance.
with addiction. There,
Yeah.
it's very stigmatized, and yet here I sit trying to fight this battle my whole life of trying to make sure people understand that it's a disease. It's not a bunch of bad moral choices. So that's how it got to where we are today. The criminal system, the legal system has had to deal with addiction, and they've done the best they could, but that's not who should have ever been dealing with it. So now drug use and drug addiction is criminalized.
Well, it especially started back in 1971 when President Nixon did the war on drugs.
Sure,
Right?
sure.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
So
listen, let me tell you a quick story about that.
Okay.
So Nixon stood up and declared that drug use is the nation's number one problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the Democrats, after a State of the Union address, how there's always a rebuttal, the Democrats put out a rebuttal. Joe Biden was the speaker for the Democrats at the time. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what the Democrats' response to Nixon saying it's our number one problem is?
What was that?
Your approach to it's not strong enough. They opposed what he said because they think he didn't take it far enough. He was proposing mandatory minimums for drug use and drug possession, and the Democrats stood up and said, no, it's not strong enough. So
Doesn't surprise
there
me.
was, in the 70s, that's sort of the beginning of the war on drugs right there.
So we got about 5 minutes left in this first one, and I might as well just go off on a tangent because we're doing tangents anyways.
You can do math. I can't
so,
do math.
So which you talked about Joe, and I know this isn't a political podcast. I just want to know what's happening to our country. Whatever happened to not leaving a man behind? Whatever happened to freedom? All of a sudden, did you hear what he put out yesterday?
He's not a man, though.
No man or woman left behind. We left people behind in Afghanistan.
Sure.
That goes against everything that my great-great-grandfather fought for, my great-grandfather fought for, my grandfather and my father fought for.
Sure.
So that's a sense of issue.
You
with
did
me.
go way off topic.
And then, now he put out yesterday, if you're a federal worker or over 100 people,
You got to have a vaccine.
have to have a vaccine.
Yep.
There goes freedom of choice.
Love it.
All right, well, let's jump into Oregon. Just decriminalize small amounts of all drugs. Yes.
Did you catch that?
This
No,
article is
Way out there in left field, you caught that?
No, I just watched everything go left field, over the fence, cross the railroad tracks, and down the road.
Yeah,
Oregon.
He set me up on
Oregon.
that one. He set
Oregon.
me up on that one.
Let's at least
For
introduce the
20
topic.
minutes, we've been
Yes.
talking about. Let's talk about it.
All right, so this is by Kathleen Davis. She wrote this article, and basically it just points out that Oregon's always been wild, wild west.
Well, wait. Okay, great. I
Yeah,
love that. Go there.
Yeah, they
Sorry.
have. They've always been wild, wild west. So according to
What
her
does that
article,
mean?
they've just been doing their own thing. So
Okay.
let me give you some examples. Oregon became the first state to decriminalize marijuana, its use back in 1973.
Whoa.
Eugene, the third
Literally
largest,
2 years after Nixon declared the war on drugs.
Yes.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah, they weren't having it.
Yeah.
So in Eugene, they're the third largest city in the state. They deploy healthcare workers, not police, when someone is having a mental health crisis. I'm not against that. I actually like
That's
that.
a great policy.
I like
though.
that. So,
That's
but they
a
were the
great
first
policy.
to do that.
That's recognizing addiction as a disease.
They were
right
the
there.
first to do that. Oregon was the first state to enhance the Death with Dignity Act in 1997, which allowed terminally ill people to end their life on their terms using lethal medication.
Long debate there.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that, but that's an interesting. That's the
But
wild. That's what your. That's
that's
point
what I
of
mean.
It's the wild, wild west.
When I say they're the wild, wild west, they've been doing some out of the box stuff
Yep.
for a long time.
Yep.
However, the push comes from the Drug and Policy Alliance, which is a New York-based organization. That's who kind of started this whole movement. And like Dr. Seller said, there's basically so last November it was passed, and it actually went into action in February. And so let's say I'm a police officer and I'm driving down downtown Portland, and I see somebody smoking crack. Okay. I approach them. They basically either get a $100 fine or they have to do an assessment.
Okay.
That's the way it sits right now for small amounts.
Okay.
Do you want to go over the small amounts?
Yeah, let's tell them that because we got enough time to do that. Let's introduce the bill. So the bill basically, from now on, if you have possession of small amounts of drugs, you can get you get a violation, which is a fine or the assessment. And the amounts are as follows: you can have anything less than 1 gram of heroin on your person. MDMA is a gram or 5 pills. Methamphetamine is 2 grams. LSD is 40 units. Psilocybin is 12 grams. Methadone is 40 units. Oxycodone is 40 pills. And cocaine is 2 grams.
And then just to bring
anything
it full
under
circle,
that, you get a fine or you get a violation. You don't get a criminal charge.
Right. It's basically the equivalent of a speeding ticket.
Right.
And so anything over that, 1 to 3 grams of heroin is still a misdemeanor. Right. Well, just anything above that's basically a misdemeanor.
Right.
All right. Well, join us in episode 51, part 2. When we come back, we're going to dive more into this whole decriminalization topic.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller, sponsored by Steps Recovery Center and the Hilton Garden Inn.
I'm Desmond Lomax, one of the clinical executives here at Steps Recovery, and once you become of the Steps family, you're just a part of the Steps family. A lot of us have overcome substances, overcome addiction, and now we're able to help other people. Second of all, we're also going to help you in a way where you can afford to be helped. Third of all, we're going to give you the same quality that many organizations are charging 2 to 3 times, and it's more about you than it is about our organization.
We welcome you back to We Do Recover with Jared Miller, co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. And now with part 2 of our podcast, Jared Miller and Dr. Terry Sellers.
Welcome back, everybody. Part 2 of the podcast We Do Recover with Jared Miller. This is episode number 50?
51.
51, sorry. Episode number 51, and episode 51 is sponsored by, part 2 is sponsored by the Hilton Garden Inn, where it's always sunny and bright. So if you're traveling through southern Utah, give them a Google search, because Hilton Garden Inn is a great place to stay. They have great amenities. The people are always super friendly. The rooms are lovely and cool. I love how cold my room gets. I stayed in a hotel in Vegas, and I couldn't get my room cool enough. It was weird. Of course, I stayed in the cheapest hotel in Vegas, but that's life.
They're skimping on the AC, huh?
Oh, yeah.
By the hour.
Apparently, yeah. It's a by-the-hour hotel in Vegas. But anyway, the Hilton Garden Inn's been really good to us, and so give them a Google search and give them a shot at your customer service, because they'll treat you like a part of their family. Okay,
All right.
Let's move on. I want to. Here's where we left off, and I want to get moving on this. But actually, misdemeanor is for heroin between 1 and 3 grams. MDMA is 1 to 4 grams. Meth is 2 to 8 grams, and cocaine is 2 to 8 grams. But above that can still be a felony.
Got you.
So
major distribution is still a
So
felony.
right. So for heroin, 4 grams of heroin is a felony. But less than 1 gram is a citation. 1 to 3 grams is a misdemeanor.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Now, it's interesting because there are some things listed there that can kill you.
Oh, absolutely.
Some of those amounts that are finable are enough to kill you.
How much fentanyl does it take to kill somebody?
Not much, and that's the problem with some of the things, is fentanyl's being so commonly cut into drugs these days, particularly methamphetamine. Methamphetamine's containing tons of fentanyl these days, and there's no way to know how much. There's no way for the customer to know how much fentanyl's in there. And so 1 to 3 grams of, no, wait, what was meth? 2 grams of meth. That can contain enough fentanyl to kill somebody for sure.
So here's my question. Does it really matter? Because, I mean, people who are using. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to look at it from both perspectives.
What do you mean by that? I'm not sure what you mean.
People who are addicted to drugs, I don't know that it truly matters, like, as far as they're still going to use, right? So your users, I don't think, are necessarily, well, of course they contribute to the problem, but they're the ones addicted. The ones who actually, the ones catching felonies are the ones distributing it, and that's still a felony.
Okay. All right.
So that's one thing that I just want to point out, right, is it's not like they're saying, oh, free for all, decriminalized everything,
Right.
have a smorgasbord of drugs.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Like, it's not completely decriminalized.
Right.
Supposedly, quote, personal use is decriminalized.
Yeah.
But I make the case when you look at this stuff, 40 pills of oxycodone. That's plenty.
Oh, yeah.
Who needs to carry 40 pills around? Most people with oxycodone, for example, have 30 pills at home and have 5 in their pocket.
Yeah.
No, very few people are carrying around 40 pills. That's a lot, actually.
40 hits of LSD.
40 hits of LSD. That's enough for a long time. That's personal use for a week.
Or
Right.
a month.
Right. It's
40.
not.
If you
that's
took
not-
one a day for 30 days,
you don't need
you'd
to have
still
that on yourself, on
Right.
your person.
Yeah. Right.
So, I don't know. I struggle with let's talk about the pros and cons.
And
of
well,
the
and
law.
like Tim said, a combination of a couple of them can cause death.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
If you're
For
mixing
sure.
those, that's a great point, Tim.
For sure. They didn't say anything. I didn't read anything about benzos, which is interesting because there are illicit benzos. Yeah. Illicit means you don't have a prescription for them. You got them some way other than the legal way where you went to a doctor and got a prescription. And there are illicit benzos, but I didn't read anything about there being a violation, being a possession of benzos being just a violation. So I'm not sure what that means, but for sure that combination of benzodiazepines, which are like Valium and Ativan and Klonopin, those things plus any opiate is the deadliest combination of things in the U.S. Methadone and benzos are, and particularly Xanax, is probably the number one combo in the whole U.S.
Yeah.
for deaths.
So to get back to this article that we read, Oregon just decriminalized small amounts of all drugs. Now what? By Kathleen Davis.
Okay.
So basically, the next part that I got highlighted here that I really liked is how does the recovery community feel about this, right? People like us that work in the recovery community. So those who work in the addiction recovery services in Oregon are split. There are people who are really excited about Measure 110 and those who are not.
Okay.
Okay, so it talks about Mike Marshall. And he is...
I hate Mike Marshall.
You don't even know Mike Marshall.
Good point.
So he's one of the loudest against Measure 110.
Okay.
He's an executive director of Oregon Recovers, an organization that serves the addicted for people in the recovery community. He is in recovery himself for alcohol and crystal meth. Marshall supports decriminalization, but he says Oregon Recovery Services is fractured and incomplete. People often have to wait for several weeks for a treatment bed to open up, and many service centers are outside of the traditional healthcare system.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you on that because unless
Can we
you have
finish
more
his-
with Mike Marshall. Yeah,
Yeah,
go
let's
with Mike
finish this.
Marshall.
So he continues. So Marshall says that previously, when people were arrested and written up for possession, many were court mandated to treatment. Right, that's kind of the model that we know if you're in Utah. The system wasn't perfect, but it helped some people get into recovery.
Sure.
Planting seeds. Right.
Sure.
Now Marshall says a lot of people will be cut off from that support because small levels of possession will be treated essentially as a speeding ticket.
Right.
I think the largest unintended consequence is that the overdose rate are going to shoot up, Marshall said. No pun intended. There's going to be more people on the streets using drugs, no mechanism to either interrupt them or direct them to treatment. And it's a good point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I want to point out a couple of things real quick. First of all, we don't know the answers.
Well,
we're
yeah.
going to debate.
We're just
this.
talking about
We're going to debate this a little bit. We don't know how this is going to turn out yet. Nobody knows actually how this is going to turn out. People are pointing to Portugal, which has decriminalized almost all drugs, and said, "Hey, this is Oregon now trying to be like Portugal." We are not Portugal. We will never be like Portugal. It's not this. The situation's way different. The United States is vastly different than Portugal in a number of things, including access to health care and that sort of thing. The second thing I'd like to point out, if we're going to be fair to the bill also takes money from so cannabis sale has been legal in Oregon for a long time now,
Since
as you pointed out, 73. This takes some of the profits from the sales tax on cannabis and diverts them to providing treatment.
Well, that was the idea. It's still being debated.
Yeah, it is, but they're working out the little details of it. But essentially, they're going to take some of the profits from cannabis, which previously had just gone to education, not drug education, just the educational system. They were taking that and using it for the educational system, and this is going to divert at least some of that towards hopefully helping people find access to treatment.
So here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Since I'm the normie over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those who have been affected by, or those who are addicts and are arrested for criminalization of substance abuse, and are forced into a rehab program, what kind of success rate do you have?
That's a great question.
What kind of people that are, where society, the judge says, you are in jail, you're forced into rehab, deal with it. What kind of success rate do you have compared to those that are like, okay, now I'm ready to change?
That's a good question, and I think it's a really fair question. I was listening on the way down. I listened to 2 podcasts about this, just to see if I could get some viewpoints that I hadn't thought of before. And one of the people who was so pro this bill was saying that before, nothing ever worked because when you force people into treatment, they never get better. And that's not true. That's not according to statistics. People that are court-ordered to go to treatment have success rates that are fairly similar to people who choose to come to treatment. Now, unfortunately,
There's
the
2 of them
success
sitting
rates,
in this room right now.
right. Well, I wasn't forced.
You weren't court-ordered into
I
treatment?
wasn't court-ordered per se. I mean, if I wanted to keep my license, I had to go to treatment. So it's kind of, it's a coerced for sure, but not quite court-ordered. But yeah, okay. But I think that's the success rates overall for the treatment industry aren't that high anyway. It's a difficult disease, and I think one of the things we fail to do is we compare apples to oranges because the success rates of treating any chronic disease are fairly low. If you take hypertension and a guy goes to a doctor for hypertension, how many of them don't ever have a high blood pressure in the next year? Like very few of them. But if you treat drug addiction and somebody relapses one time in the following year after that, we call that a failure, when in fact that's kind of how it goes. That's how chronic diseases are.
Yeah. Great question. Here's how I'm going to answer it. Some of my hardest clients are exactly what you just described.
Forced into rehab?
Unwilling, right?
Okay.
Dishonest. So here's what I'm going to say. Oftentimes, people go to drug court where they're supervised. They have to go to treatment, right? And they're monitored UA'd. And that's a year program. When people go through that program, here's what happens. Even though they're unwilling and they're unhonest and they're right, not open, their life gets substantially better in that year period. Oftentimes they hold a stable job for the first time in a long time. Oftentimes their family members start talking to them again. Oftentimes if they have kids they're estranged from, they start getting back involved in their kids' lives. So at the end of that 1 year period, yes, you're absolutely, I mean, if they want to go back out and reuse and they're off probation, that's their choice. And here's what happens. We plant a seed. And if they choose to go out and pile more manure on top of that seed after we've planted it, great. And hopefully one day when they're down and out, they got the gift of desperation, they'll go, one of my happiest times in the last 5 or 10 or whatever years, fill in the blank, was that year I was court ordered and I did drug court. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I wanted to lead into the next question I had. So you talk about the decriminalization of drugs and substances in Oregon. Do you then apply laws like you do with alcohol? Okay, you get in a car accident, it's one thing. If you get in a car accident because you're drunk, then it's much worse. So instead of punishing the drug use, you punish the crimes associated with the drug use.
Yeah.
I can support that.
You're not just robbing a lady. You're robbing a lady because you're high and you're looking for drug money. Okay, now that would put you into quote drug court. So instead of being just hey you had a bunch of cocaine on you, you're going to drug court. No, drug court's now because of the crimes associated with the substance.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think we're hitting on all the right cylinders, and those are great questions. The problem with, I think, what they're doing, this is my opinion, because I'm going to take an opinion on it. I think the problem with what they're doing up in Oregon is it's too soft of an approach, right? So, for example...
you sound like Joe Biden talking about Nixon.
For example, this thing rolled out in February of 2021. As of August of 2021, guess how many people actually showed up for an assessment that called that number?
So here's let's point this out real quick.
I want to hear what the number is. What's the
I know,
number?
but I'm not going to let him do the number yet.
Okay.
Because what happens is if you interact with the police and you have less than a gram of heroin on you, you have 2 choices. Pay a fine, go get an assessment.
Now let's talk about the fine.
That's the choices.
If you don't pay the fine, guess what happens?
Almost nothing, frankly.
Nothing.
There is no, if you don't, there's no failure to appear warrants if you don't show up for your court date. You know, there's none of that stuff. So it's got no teeth.
So the fine is basically not worth even the paper that they write it on.
Right. But in essence, that's what the bill says. You can pay a fine or you can go get an assessment. Now,
okay, and
a lot of people are not going to want to pay a fine.
Right.
Although if they find out there's no consequences to not paying, they'll choose that. But anyway, let's assume you had to pay the fine. Some people are going to choose assessment. So how many people have chosen assessment? How many people have shown up?
So this got rolled out in February of 2021.
Okay.
As of August
so we're
2021.
talking about 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Less than 30 people
have shown up for an assessment.
And how many assessments have been given or subscribed or whatever? What's the term?
So when you're in the moment when you're interacting with the police officer, this is how I understand it. When you're in the moment of interacting with the police officer, you can they either write you a fine or you can call the number with the police officer right there and make an appointment.
So how many phone calls have been made? If there's 30 that have done it.
I'm sure
30,000. I don't know.
I'm sure. I would be guessing to try to answer that.
So on the street, people are like, yeah, I'll call the number, and then they don't.
Right.
Or they don't show up.
Sure,
Officer
Jackson,
number,
let's call the number.
But then they don't show up.
You can get me in next week? Great.
I'll be there.
Thanks.
See you next week. Click.
Right. And then they never show.
It's because they're on drugs at the time. You have to wait for them to sober up. Then you give them the ticket.
But
therein lies the problem, in my opinion.
That's a problem. There's no teeth to this at all. There's nothing here at all. And some people are going to bristle at the word teeth because we're not trying to bite people. We're trying to decrease public drug use, I think. I don't know. Maybe that's not even a worthy goal.
But I liked what Sean said, because to Sean's point, if I'm strung out, if I'm strung out on heroin, I've been here. I'm talking about the old days now. If I'm strung out on heroin, it's only a matter of time until my addiction crosses over into shoplifting.
Because you being strung out is between you and you.
Right.
In a narrow point of view. You have not affected me at all.
Unless you're behind the wheel.
Okay. Yeah. You behind the wheel. You're breaking into my house to steal whatever.
Well, if I'm smoking heroin off tinfoil, it's not harming you.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
You're at home and you're doing whatever. That's between you. You know, the same thing with prostitution. It's two consenting adults, as one theory goes.
Right.
But once you start acting, and I become harmed, or you harm people in society, that's
Once I start shoplifting, or once I start stealing copper, or once I start, what were some of the other things that we used to do? Yeah. I'm hopefully the statute's over.
And I think that's where the idea is like, well, if we stop
hypothetically
pawn our mom's TV.
And that might be the original thought, is if we stop the drugs, then we stop the copper theft and we stop beating up grandmas and we stop this.
No, that's a thought. That's a beautiful thought. That's what a lot of things have been aimed at, is reducing the impact on society. Right?
I think that's what it's all
Methadone clinics were invented so that opiate addicts didn't have to go out and steal stuff to pay for their heroin. The government then sponsored methadone clinics because what it did, the one thing we know methadone did, was it reduced the number of crimes that heroin addicts were doing on the street to pay for their heroin habit.
Right. And so if people are strung out, even though this
that's called harm reduction,
effective thing, it's just a matter of time until they cross over into an illegal activity like you're talking about.
Yeah, but then again, if the state is offering safe drugs and you're able to do these things in safe places, does that reduce the problems that occur with it?
Reduces harm.
Yeah, so it's like, hey, I can go home and do some heroin, and I know the heroin I got it over at the pharmacy. It's good stuff, and I can go home and do my amount, and I can be happy all weekend. I'm not harming anybody. Compared to running downtown, trying to find a heroin dealer, having to deal with all that, stealing money to get it, and then, getting baked behind the 7-Eleven, and then any problems that occur with that.
So you make a point, except a problem with your point is, so far the state is not supplying the drugs, right? There are a lot of states that have, so you're still having to buy your heroin from a dealer. You have no idea what's in your heroin. If the state started supplying the heroin and certifying that it was pure, that would eliminate some of that for sure.
And then,
what about the pot stores? Where do they get their? Is that state sponsored?
Yeah,
pot?
those are grown by state approved farms.
Okay,
that's what's happening in Utah. There's only 5 people that. Nope, that's not true. There are 11 licenses given to people to grow pot, but they're overseen by the state.
But in other states as
They're
well,
private
for
growers.
So
but
in other states, the
growing
pot comes
pot.
from state approved
Right,
areas.
yeah, right. Yeah.
So theoretically,
it's an individual farmer, but he has to pass some stuff that the state.
but
What you're talking
Yeah.
about is more like in like the UK, Amsterdam type stuff, right? Where you can go somewhere. And
I'm
buy
so
some,
ignorant.
Well, no.
I'll just go with that
No,
one. Yeah.
no,
But- no, that is true.
because we do it in Utah. We have
Do you have state facilities
we
that are
have
distributing heroin?
we have a safe injection site. They're not distributing
I'm
the
talking
heroin,
about where you
but
can
they are
buy-
providing clean needles, and they
Yeah.
are supervising people shooting up, so that if they overdose, then there's somebody there that can give them naloxone right away. So that's starting to happen, and Oregon for sure has safe injection sites. If you read a couple of those articles, they talk about it. So they're doing some of that stuff. I want to point out 2 quick points that I forgot to. First of all, Oregon is almost last in the nation in access to treatment.
Right.
So this, even though they're Wild West in policy, their citizens have a very hard time accessing treatment to begin with.
And that's what
People are going to California and Washington for treatment from Oregon because there's not much in the way of treatment.
that's what
up there.
Marshall points out is, we're talking about averting them into treatment. However, there's no beds
There's no
available.
treatment.
There's no
Right.
treatment, right?
Right.
Like you're basically creating this avenue where it's a dead end.
Yep. My second point that I want to make really quick is not everyone who gets stopped that has less than a gram of heroin on them is a heroin addict.
Okay.
Some are users. Some are playing around on a weekend. This having stuff on you does not prove you're addicted yet.
Look, and
If
I
you have stuff on you every day for a year,
Right.
you're probably addicted.
So you can't say that drug use is a black and white issue. You have people that are addicted. You have
Right.
the
There are
10%
people
for fun.
10% of people that use substances, alcohol, doesn't matter what the substance is, 10% of people end up becoming actual addicts where they everyday use.
And then there's the other group that says, "Oh yeah, I do it, and I can't." They say they can quit, and they can.
There are people that
There are people
there
like
are
that.
people that can do that for
And
sure.
then, of course, all the other ones who I can quit anytime. No, you can't.
Yeah,
You need
They're
help.
just in denial. They're
Right,
part
there's
of
a
the
lot of people that
10%.
say they can quit anytime that
But for the people that are
can't.
just like, "Hey, this is my recreational fun,"
they do it just on a weekend. They never do it during work. They never let it affect any of their other activities.
Yeah.
There are people out there that do that, like people that drink socially.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that they're moving in the right direction as far as having it be a healthcare issue. I just don't like that there's no accountability to this bill, to this law now.
There isn't much accountability.
There's no accountability.
Yeah, that's a downside of the bill.
And look,
for
here's
sure.
here's the reality. Today in 2021, there's 23.5 million Americans that are living life in recovery. I mean, I don't know that the system that we have is completely broken already. And who knows? We'll only know in 10 years from now if this was the correct.
Okay, so maybe I
That's a
just had
point.
another thought here. Now we're talking about those that can partake, and it does not quote affect them. They can partake. What's
Yeah,
you're
the
saying?
weekend raver.
Weekend ravers.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you, both of you, as recovering addicts, have negative or biased feelings towards people who can enjoy these things?
No,
where
I
it was
don't.
an addiction
I don't.
and a downfall in your life.
I don't. I know I can't be one of those people, but I don't have any bad feelings towards people that can.
And so if there's a bill that says, hey, they can go out and they can smoke some crack and it's okay, and it's like, oh, wait a second, I had a problem with that years
Well, I
ago.
think crack is bad for society, but I don't have a bad feeling about the person that smokes crack.
Okay.
I think crack is not something that is ever going to help society be any better, but
My thing is, I don't have a problem with them. However, I do think that it contributes to the problem. I do think it contributes to the overall problem, because here's the thing: is you don't know if you're part of right? Genetics is 40% of addiction is genetics, and so if you're going out, if we all go out, okay, and we all do some ecstasy and go to the club, Sean, well, how do you know if you have, right, that you're going to wake up the next
genetics,
morning,
right.
the genetic factor where you
Right.
can wake up the next morning and go, I got to do it again and again and again.
Well,
Or we move on with college life.
Well, I mean, you could be addicted to pornography, or you could be showing your shoulders at BYU.
But
I
it's
mean,
the same.
You
Addicted,
brought that full circle.
but addicted to pornography is the same.
Oh, it's all the same.
Mechanism in the brain for sure. And what the mechanism is, again, here I'm going to harp. We're almost out of time, but it's a great topic. I'm going to harp on this. All these drugs that we abuse release dopamine in our midbrains in massive amounts. Our midbrains weren't built for that. They're not built for the massive surge of dopamine that we get from drugs and alcohol. And so if used long enough by anyone, anyone can become addicted.
So I got two things real fast.
Genetically predisposed people more likely, but anyone can become addicted.
Here's an argument against it. Okay. People, small businesses in Portland are closing down because families do not want to bring their kids when they know that Joe or whoever, John, Susie, whoever, is smoking crack on the corner, right? If I'm a family man, I know that there's this nice little diner on the corner, but I know people are outside smoking crack or shooting up heroin, I'm not going to go to that diner. So it's starting to affect downtown Portland. The second thing is arguments for it are this. We take somebody who's using, let's say heroin, we throw them in jail. They have forced sobriety. They get out. They don't realize their tolerance is dropped. And what happens?
Right, they die.
They overdose and they die.
Right.
So there's the argument. And my last point here is up north in Davis County, they have the receiving center where you run into the police officer catches you. He either says, A, you're going to jail, or B, you can go to this deferment center where then you can go to treatment. I like that solution.
Right.
With that, I submit.
Yeah. Any last thoughts, Sean? We're about out of time.
No, I was wanted to talk about hookers some more.
It's an interesting. This is a very interesting bill. I dislike one thing, and I think we call things that make bills like this, we call them progressive. I don't know that we know this is progress yet. Yeah. We don't know the outcome yet. Right. We don't know if this is progress or not. It's an attempt to battle the war on drugs, which has been pretty much a dismal failure.
Oh, absolutely.
No question.
And I like the decriminalization. I just don't agree with the no accountability.
Yep, exactly.
So there's got to be some kind of follow through.
Yep.
All right, well, check it out. Join us next week for episode 52. We got Brandon. Man, my mind just blanked.
That's all right.
We got our
Brandon
guests talking about step 3 next week. We'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. This has been a production from a podcast studio.